Right.
And I think in the world that we're living in today, we have to decide what kind of meaning do we get to ascribe to? What kind
Yeah.
of meaning does our own life have? How can we be a contribution with that meaning? And what can we do with it? Because we can be a part of the tearing down and tearing apart that's happening all
Yeah.
over the world,
Hmm.
or we can be a part of the building up
That's
of first ourselves and our story, then our family, then our community, and then our ripple can reach out into the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Yollab Central. Today, I am joined with Bridget. So, Bridget, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about this conversation today?
Okay. Well, I just have to tell you that, especially we see in the world today how story absolutely runs our lives from inside of us, from outside of us. And there are ways to be able to claim your story, rise beyond your story, and also create new story for yourself so that you can be successful in business, life, and relationships.
Okay. Now, since we are focusing so much on storytelling, right? Can you just tell how storytelling, the skill basically that is there, and what everybody basically needs, not just for telling stories to the kids or to their or hearing stories from the grandparents, but actually in life, how can storytelling be transformative?
Well, there's a number of ways that that happens. I will tell you that some of the greatest business minds in the world have really got this storytelling thing down. So they understand the power of storytelling and they utilize it to move audiences.
Mhm.
It becomes their rallying cry. It becomes a movement. And so it's greater than just having someone saying, "Oh yeah, that Bill Gates guy, I kind of like him." Or I don't, right? It instead, when they have a chance to be before someone, um, you take a look at the top leaders of the top companies in the world,
Yeah.
and they have a way to tell a story.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting too, because some of the billionaires in the world will tell those proteges of theirs, hey,
Mhm.
if you want to do better in life and in business, learn how to tell stories. And so, how do we do this? How do we put something together that's actually going to move people to take action, especially positive, healthy action? And, most business owners think that they have a solution. So then the positive action would be for them to, do something with their business. But I also like to take a look at this in terms of business and social movements.
Mhm.
And, we see so much division and hatred going on in the world. But when people meet, when
Mhm.
they have an opportunity to have anything from a summit to a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
it is the stories that bring people together as humans, as individuals, and then we begin to see what we have in common and what moves us rather than the things that we want to take a stand against. And
Mhm.
so it's the conversations that really need to happen. So one of the things is to determine your own passion. How is it that you got involved in what you're doing in life,
Yeah.
right? So whether that's a nonprofit or a business or whatever endeavor that you're working on, what moved you to
Mhm.
begin to do work or take action in this area?
Yeah.
And usually people will find that their mess is their message, their misery becomes their ministry, right? It's the places where they have struggled the most.
Mhm.
And Aditya, it's the hero's journey
Mhm.
for every single one of us. There usually is something that is called an inciting incident. It is something that happened to us that either it was we were in danger of our life
Mhm.
or our lifestyle or the someone that we love was
Yeah.
was in grave danger, and it was not a journey we wanted to go on. No one loves financial distress or divorce or
Yeah.
cancer or any of the things that happen in life. But there comes a time when the hero has to go on a journey. There's no turning back. The
Yeah.
odds are against them, and they've got to go out on this journey. So then the really delicious story becomes, what did they discover? And, where was it difficult along the
Yeah.
way? But also, what information or knowledge did they come up with? And this is where businesses who offer solutions, well, how did you know about that pain in the first place? Usually was something personal.
Yeah.
And the best salespeople, if it wasn't their personal pain, they'll make sure that everybody knows about the CEO's personal pain that was
Uh,
behind this, right?
yeah.
And then it's like, I know you, I know your pain, and we created this incredible solution.
Mhm.
But it's really beautiful to take someone on a journey. And every story and every individual has rises and falls in terms
Yeah.
of their story. And those can come into play as well. Like, how did you rise beyond this? How did you find the grit and determination? How did you come up with a solution? Those make really good stories too. And when it comes to personal relationships, it's very interesting that most of us don't I want to be careful how I term this. Most of us love to have relationships with real people.
Yeah.
Not someone who's just cascaded and flowed through life and never had a burden, never had a
Mhm.
concern, never, you know,
Yeah.
mom and dad gave them money and, they're just going out to do whatever. Like, we love stories where people are vulnerable. We
Mhm.
love stories that we can relate to. We love it when we can see that the other person would have something in common with us. And that's when social relationships, business relationships, and other change is born.
Mhm.
And so storytelling is really, really important. And I often will read a quote that I really love by Harold Goddard. He's another writer and another author, I should say, and also was a professor. But he said, the destiny of the world is determined less by the battles lost and won than by the stories it loves and believes in.
Yeah.
And so we can take that in, and we're seeing it now,
Yeah.
right? Less by the battles lost and won than by the stories it loves and believes in. And we've got to be careful. What stories are we listening to? What
Yes.
stories are we seeing on social media? What are we finding that we relate to? But
Mhm.
also, do we do any due diligence? Do we check out where a story
Yeah.
actually comes from? Because I find that millions of people are being led by stories that are oftentimes not true. And I believe it's really important for us to do research and get to the root of those. But also, even in that quote, we talk about the destiny of the world is determined less by battles lost and won, but also for an individual, the destiny of my life
Mhm.
is determined less by battles lost and won than by the stories I love and believe in.
Mhm.
And this is where Aditya gets really juicy
Mhm.
because much of the world are still living in victim mode of whatever it is that sent them on the quest in the first place.
Mhm.
So, belief systems, people, situations, and circumstances completely out of their control most of the time, right? But there is this victimization, this blame that a lot of people will stay in. The people who interest me and who are absolutely amazing are the ones who have risen beyond. They
Mhm.
are the victor of those belief systems, of those
Yeah.
situations, of those circumstances, of those people, and they have decided to make their own way anyway. And so this is where I find the most successful people in the world is when they take control of their own narrative and decide that it doesn't belong in other people's hands,
Mhm.
and that also they want to influence and do something extraordinary, transform other people's lives
Yeah.
with an authentic, true, and powerful narration.
Yeah.
And by doing this, they also prove to other people that they can do the same.
Mhm. Okay. Now, actually, now it the reason I was relating, I mean, I actually related to that quote a lot because at some point of time, there was this particular work experience that I just had, and the outcome was not as great as I had expected, right? So I was of
Mhm.
the opinion, yeah, it was not okay. There's no point writing it down in my CV or trying to tell somebody because I was having that notion that, yeah, I did not turn out well, and whatever I did was just a waste of time. But then, I mean, due to my friends telling me, I showed them what I did, and then they were like, "You've done some crazy stuff here. You should be putting this out there and then telling the story better." And sometimes it's just like I'm not able to tell them the story the way it's supposed to be told, and then they try to do it better. There's so many more things that you can tell. So from there, surely what I feel is that, I mean, if you look at your own story from a different perspective, it definitely transforms the whole message, right? As you mentioned, that it's not the battles that we win or lose, it's more about which is the story that we want to tell to others, and that is what will decide, right, about us or about others. Now, but one question that I had, since you mentioned about people being led by stories that they see on social media and everything. Now, on from your perspective, as you mentioned, due diligence is so important. Uh, we see a lot of short form videos, right? And these
Mhm.
specific short form videos don't necessarily have the whole picture, right? And they
Exactly.
specifically specialize in the fact of cutting short that part of the story which is I don't know, aligns with your thought process or however you want to call it. Now, how do people actually dissociate themselves from a story that is so compelling? Can you actually, I mean, from an audience perspective, if somebody was listening to a very good, I don't know, speaker, storyteller, or whatnot. Now, let's not be in the storyteller's shoes. Let's talk about the audience and try to do the due diligence from our perspective. How would that look like?
Yeah, well, this is, I'll be honest with you, this is why I love books because you get a larger
Yeah.
context and you have a greater understanding instead of these tiny little sound bites,
Hmm.
that are often taken out of context and they
Yeah.
can, humans, we get a lot of these little sound bites and all of a sudden, we're enraged or furious or,
Yeah.
a multiple other emotions. And I often find that it is the us versus them little sound bites that create the most fury amongst people against each other.
Yeah.
And this is what I would say is when you find yourself moving in a direction that doesn't feel good inside, that is causing you to look at other people in a way where you're distrustful, you're
Mhm.
suspicious, you're angry, you're feeling victimized in any way, that's a really good time to step back and say, maybe I look at this a little bit bigger. What is this particular person's agenda? What is it that, they're wanting to do? And sometimes people will take sound bites of multiple people, but they'll just take those tiny little pieces
Yeah.
that are the most incendiary, and suddenly a narration is forming that may make sense to your brain. But if it's sending you off your rocker, if you're twisting out here in the universe
Yeah.
and everything is not feeling good, it's likely that you are actually being sent on a journey. You're being manipulated
Mhm.
in a way that you don't deserve. So to come back and get grounded in who you are, what you are about, why you're here on the planet. I
Mhm.
like to call it ikigai, your reason for breathing, and to get grounded and centered
Mhm.
in that. And then to say, is this important? Is it going to be important in 100 years? And
Right.
if you believe that it is, then do your research and go back, double check the agendas, double check the real larger story of people so that you have a broader understanding.
Mhm.
I find it fascinating right now. And I have, in the United States, we have a lot of people on this side of the aisle and this side of the aisle. And frankly, I don't believe in aisles. I believe in humanity.
Mhm.
But it's fascinating to see. And I have others who help me with this research. It's like something happens in the world, and then suddenly both sides are sending out social media.
Right.
And most of those things, especially in the immediacy, are not true.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if you're on one side and you're watching things of this same nature, you're going to be fed more because
That's
the algorithms on social media say, oh, he likes this, and this. We're going to give him more of that. Oh, she likes this, and this. We're going to give her more of that. So the same situation and circumstance happened, but two different people are getting two absolutely different narratives of what that was all about. And
hmm
so this is really important. It's about ascribing meaning
hmm
to what you're seeing, but also, we're very easily manipulated by social media if we're not careful. So grounding ourselves back into our own experience. I'm going to share an inspirational story, if I may.
for sure.
There was a gentleman that just this last weekend was at my retreat, and he's going to have a book coming out. But it was very fascinating that he was very healthy and he worked in athletics and, you know, loving life. He still had his problems like everybody, but he had a beautiful life. And then all of a sudden, he couldn't cross the football field.
Uh-huh.
So his kids are like, who are in the medical industry, they're like, Dad, you got to get to the doctor. Well, he goes to the doctor, finds that there is an issue with his heart
hmm
and that he is below hospice level
hmm
in terms of his physical health. His heart is dying,
hmm
and there is not a way that they know of to be able to bring it up.
hmm
And they're saying, go home and get your affairs in order, and you need to retire from your job because essentially you have only so much time to live.
hmm
And so for several days he got really really really
hmm
depressed, and then he decided, and this is the whole clincher, his name is Andy Atkinson and you can look him up, but he decided this is the meaning that doctors have ascribed to my life.
hmm
And he started studying Joe Dispenza and several other things. And he came up with his own meditation practice and he raised his vibration and he started to tell himself a whole different story.
Right.
And it began to shift his medical tests
hmm
because he was changing things in his body.
hmm
And now his heart is healed.
hmm
It's an extraordinary miracle.
Yeah.
But what I want to point out is that Andy decided he was going to ascribe a different meaning to his life and his health than what the doctors had decided. And
Right.
I think in the world that we're living in today, we have to decide what kind of meaning do we get to ascribe to? What kind
Yeah.
of meaning does our own life have? How can we be a contribution with that meaning? And what can we do with it? Because we can be a part of the tearing down and tearing apart that's happening all over the world,
hmm
or we can be a part of the building up
That's
of first ourselves and our story, then our family, then our community, and then our ripple can reach out into the world. And
perfect.
and I love how you said, you had this story and you didn't like the outcome.
hmm
And then you shared some things with friends and they gave you a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so you began to take a look at this in a different way, but it's still painful,
hmm
right? But it also is probably one of those places that you will reach other people when you learn how to tell it and ascribe the meaning that you were able to eventually find from it.
hmm
Right. And
Yeah.
so in business, it's rough when we have those stories, when something happens and it is not what we wanted. And we wanted to,
Yeah.
we wanted to serve people and we wanted
Mhm.
them to love the work we do with them and
Yeah.
for them and things like that. And then something happens. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that experience because it's very valuable.
So now I want to go back to the storyteller's perspective, right? Now, I know you're an author. You love writing it all in full sentences and giving the your audience everything. But then it's just how the internet and social media has evolved now, right? We're not putting this whole podcast out on social media. We're putting it in bite-sized content. I don't know, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 90 seconds, whatever that the algorithm allows. So for storytellers out there who are trying to capitalize on something like this, right? Going from something that they've been doing out on stage, giving long form speeches, or just telling a story, right, in the form of book or a novel. Now, to get to shift this mind space and perspective from long form to short content, what have you been doing and what's working or not working? And if you can share some of
Yeah.
that.
Oh, great question. Thank you. I will share a couple of things. There is a book that's absolutely brilliant called Smart Brevity,
Okay.
and it helps anyone distill down product information or business information or personal information or stories
Hmm.
into the deepest, most essential pieces because people don't have a lot of time or are not willing to spend a
Yeah.
lot of time. Like if they want to read a book, they'll listen on Audible or they'll read the full
Yeah.
book. But we've got so many things coming in
Yeah.
at us, like you said, these 30-second, 60-second sound bites. So then what as storytellers we get to do is to remember what it was like to have the first tweets come out.
Yeah.
Here's all this content, and then you had to have something that was tweetable,
Yeah.
right? You had to take something, distill it down into something that people would pay attention to in those bite-sized moments. And
Hmm.
so that's the era that we're living in now. So there has to be more meaning. There has to be other elements that people use. Like I love it when humor is used. I know some people love to dance, but humor is a really good one. Also depth in just a couple of sentences or in a paragraph or in something
Yeah.
spoken in just those 30, 60 seconds. Like, okay, how can you be authentically you?
Yeah.
And, the experts, the really great influencers, they have figured out a formula that their particular audience likes,
Yeah.
so number one is a hook. How do you compel them, bring them in, make them want to stop just for a second and stop scrolling? And
Yeah.
so that hook is really important. And then the second thing is, how are you going to keep them there for a minute or 30 seconds? And then the third thing is, how are you going to leave them?
Hmm.
You may notice when you're scrolling and you're like, oh, that was interesting, but you keep on going. You don't like or share or
Yeah.
follow. But when are the times that you do?
Hmm.
What is it that compelled you to want to stay in this person's circle of influence? So
Hmm.
take a look at your own scrolling behavior and then decide what is the ripple that I want to have? How do I want to engage people and keep them there? And
Hmm.
then how do I want to leave them to the point where they don't want to leave me?
Yeah.
How do I create this movement where they want to continue to have at least some influence, some connection, something beautiful with you? That's the way to do it.
Okay, now Bridget, I've asked you so much about storytelling. Now I want to hear your story. I'm sorry, I've not asked you what your story is. So if you could just share that. Sorry for asking it so late.
Certainly. I I think part of the reason I'm so compelled by big story,
Mm,
by social movements, by things in business and in life that really move the needle
mhm,
and create transformation, make us want to change ourselves for the better, is I had some things that happened in childhood. I
mhm,
have really great adoptive parents,
mhm,
and they adopted me when I was 6 months old. So I had my birth parents, my foster parents, and then my adoptive parents.
okay.
And I always just felt like, at some point in time, the big people are going to leave. But I didn't know that was operating my whole system, my heart, my head. It was there in the background, but it made me fierily
Yeah.
independent. And I had a hard time asking for help or collaboration with other people. And, probably had a attachment disorder for a time. And then I had an extraordinary near-death experience in a hospital
Mhm,
where I was given a second chance at life. And they were going to call my mother back. I had nurses talking in the corridor saying she's not going to make it until morning. And then I was told I was being given a second chance at life. And I took it and I ran with it. And Aditya was also, for me, it was total transformation because the story I'd been telling myself before that was I wasn't good enough, I wasn't pretty enough, I
Mhm.
wasn't smart enough, I
Yeah.
wasn't brilliant enough. I wasn't enough to the point where people would leave, right? And also that I wasn't good enough in the eyes of God. And that's what I completely believed until I had that very beautiful experience in the hospital and was given a second chance. So
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, what are you going to do with this?
Right.
So when I went out into the world after college and I'm meeting people from all these different backgrounds and walks of life, and I'm seeing some people operating in the same box that I was, gang members who mom and dad are gang members, grandma and grandpa, it was like their religion and they didn't know any better way. And I would see the psychological twisting that had an influence on them until they began to see their story from a greater perspective,
Mhm.
that there were opportunities and not only limitations. And that's when I saw the light come on and I
Mhm.
fell in love with the human soul and the human story.
Right.
And I could see threads of story as people would speak to me, just like when you were telling your story, I could see the threads of it. And I'm like, oh, that's delicious. And he could do that there. I just naturally began to do those things. And so I got to write a lot of these stories of transformation and I just fell in love. And I have been writing those stories ever since. And so I have a lot of national bestsellers, international bestsellers, a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller. But my favorite thing on the planet is to help others to recognize the power of their own story, to
Mhm.
be able to reassign and ascribe meaning to what they have experienced in the past and who it has sculpted and made into them today. And what are their gifts now that they're taking out into the world? Because when we get in touch with that, Aditya, it's like it's called the elixir of life. It's the
Yeah.
magic, it's the passion, it's the radiance that a person can live life from when
Mhm.
they really recognize, like, who am I and what am I here
Yeah.
for and what am I here to do? You discover that in your own story.
Mhm.
And then life takes on multiple dimensions with so much more joy and meaning and connection and abundance and prosperity and all the good things.
Whatnot. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was just hypnotized by how you were telling this. I mean, your whole journey, right? It's been a very long time that I've seen somebody use all the possible tools when it comes to storytelling, modulation, vi vis I mean, visible tricks, just the way you're talking. It's been such a long time having somebody tell a story so beautifully. So thank you so much for that. I don't know if somebody is listening, they are not, but I would surely recommend having a watch at this one. So thank you so much for joining in. Before I close the episode, where can people get in touch with you and if they want to know more about you?
Wonderful. Well, I'm on Instagram and social media. You can find me at Bridget Cook-Burch. I'm known as the Book Whisperer. I have a website called yourinspiredstory.com. And we help both fiction and nonfiction authors. We have a specialty in nonfiction, so business, thought leadership, and also memoir. Those are our specialties. So if you have a story and you want to share it, and it's time to get it out into the world in a really big, remarkable way, we also have a publishing company and we love to launch emerging leaders into the world. So thank you for asking.
So yeah, it's just that I'm trying to bring people here to share their story and then share lessons, right? And yeah, it's sometimes
Mhm.
great to have people who can actually tell so much of their story without telling so much, right? It's just that you're able to just, I don't know, communicate in a manner, right? Uh, Words fail me sometimes. I'm so sorry about that. But
It
yeah.
does me too. That's why I'm a writer. I understand.
Right. So, okay. Thank you so much for joining in. To the audience who's been watching and listening, if you liked what we talked about, do leave a like. The comment section is open for questions, suggestions, perspectives, and yeah, anything else that you want to write about. And then don't forget to subscribe before you close the window itself. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much, Richard.